Hey guys, what is up? My name is Brienne and welcome back to my channel, Books with Brie. Today we will be doing a bookish this or that. I have gone through my Goodreads and I have compiled a list of either 2 books or a book in a series or 2 series so that I can choose a this or that. So each set of books, I will be choosing which I prefer, and I will be telling you guys why, and it's just another way for me to be able to recommend you guys books that I don't normally talk about that deserve so much more attention because they played either a crucial role in my life or just how I look at the world. And the authors, I tried to wide variety of different authors and different kinds of books. Alright, so the first books that we are going to be doing for this or that is Harry Potter by J.K. Rowling and the Folk of the Air trilogy by Holly Black. So Harry Potter is a favorite of many people. It follows the main character Harry Potter from the age of 11 to the epilogue of Deathly Hallows, the 7th book, where he is almost 40, and you follow him as he finds out first he is a wizard, second that he will be attending the school of Hogwarts, school of witchcraft and wizardry, and then follow him through his really difficult adventures with Hermione and Ron, his 2 best friends, as they try to defeat the big bad Lord Voldemort. Right, and so the Folk of the Air trilogy, this is book 1, The Cruel Prince, follows the main character Jude as she fights to have some sort of position in the kingdom of Elfhame, where they are ruled by the Fae, the folk of the Fae. And she comes to live in the kingdom of Elfhame because her really sort of adoptive father had come to the human realm and murdered both her mother and her father, and so it follows Jude 10 years later as she's about 17, 18 years old, trying to gain power and influence in the royal hierarchy of the kingdom of Elfhame. So looking at both the Folk of the Air trilogy and Harry Potter by J.K. Rowling, I think that J.K. Rowling had more time, since her series was 7 books, for world development than The Cruel Prince did, because it was only 3 books. But both of them are an all-time favorite for me, but I think I would choose Harry Potter over the Folk of the Air trilogy because this is literally my childhood. I grew up on not only the books but the movies as well, and it just brings me back so much nostalgia every time I reread this, every time I rewatch the movies, and there is so much more world building and character development, and there's just a little more to the Harry Potter series than there is the Folk of the Air trilogy. And I say that knowing that both series had 2 different end goals with how and what they wanted the readers to feel and what they wanted to happen by the end of their series. The next books I will be doing for this or that are Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen and Anna and the French Kiss by Stephanie Perkins. So Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen is actually what most modern day readers would like to call the origin story for the trope of enemies to lovers, because this follows Elizabeth Bennet and Mr. Darcy's love story, and of course they start off with this weird kind of hatred and disrespect for each other, but slowly, very slowly, it grows into something more before they finally end up together in the end. And this does take place in the 1800s, so it is a classic, and I read this for school. Now, Anna and the French Kiss by Stephanie Perkins actually follows the main character, Anna, of course, as she's attending this elite boarding school in Paris, France, and it follows her romance with this other student, Antony, and she is struggling not only with her own feelings towards him because he already has a girlfriend, but also the feelings that she has towards her father, her best friend, and her struggles trying to grow more comfortable with the environment of Paris instead of her home in the United States. Now, between Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen and Anna and the French Kiss by Stephanie Perkins, I did truly enjoy Pride and Prejudice, and it will always be a classic and one of my favorite books that we did get to read in school. But out of these two, I will be picking Anna and the French Kiss just because this one invoked more of an emotional reaction from me, and since it was more of a modern setting, I was able to relate to the characters more than I was in Pride and Prejudice. And this book as well included a lot more culture from Paris, and I'm really looking into moving to Paris when I get older. So it was nice just to be able to read about a modern day culture of Paris and how they look at Americans, because it is quite funny and I understand the humor and the writing a lot better as well, and I was able to read this in a single day. Alright, so the third set of books I will be doing for this or that is City of Bones by Cassandra Clare, or more in general, the Mortal Instruments series by Cassandra Clare, and House of Earth and Blood, or the Crescent City series by Sarah J. Maas. So the Mortal Instruments series follows the main character Clary Frey as she watches the world around her that she thought she knew unravel and discovers a hidden secret that her mother had kept from her her entire life, and she goes through this 6-book series trying to figure out who she is and how she fits into this new world that she's discovered. And then in Crescent City's series, it follows the main character, Bryce Quinlan, as she tries to solve the murder of her best friend, Danica Fendier. And not only is she trying to find herself in this world without her best friend, but she also has to try and find the person who murdered her after finding out that the person they put away was not the actual killer. Alright, so out of these two, Crescent City and the Mortal Instruments, I'm going to have to say I would pick the Mortal Instruments, no matter how controversial and bizarre that seems. I know Crescent City was written amazingly and it is more of an adult book, but City of Bones and the Mortal Instruments series in general was such a fundamental read for me, and I read it back in 7th grade, and it really brought me into the world of fantasy and changed what I was reading and how I was reading it so much that I don't think without this series I would have been the reader I am today. And really, I just love the character development that we get from these amazing characters throughout the 6 books, and then in the other series that take place in the Shadowhunter Chronicles, as well as the fact that I know a lot of people find the characters in this book annoying and whiny, but they fail to remember that these characters range in age from 15 to 17. So, of course they're going to be whiny. They're accurately portraying the ages of the characters and how they would think and their thought process. So I really just would choose the Mortal Instruments over Crescent City any day. So the next 2 books it will be between is Twilight by Stephanie Myers and Hush Hush by Becca Fitzpatrick. The Twilight series by Stephanie Myers follows the main character, Bella Swan, as she attends a new high school where her father lives in Forks, Washington after moving there from staying with her mom in Arizona, and she meets this mysterious boy named Edward Cullen, and it follows their romance. And this book really launched off the whole vampire craze. And the book Hush Hush, or the Hush Hush series by Becca Fitzpatrick, follows the main character Nora through high school as she tries to figure out her relationship with the main love interest, Patch, and she soon finds out that he is one of the fallen, and she is kind of pushed into this whole war between the fallen and immortals, and if she chooses the wrong side, it could very well cost her her life. Now, if it's between Twilight by Stephenie Meyer or Hush Hush by Becca Fitzpatrick, I am going to freely admit that both of these books are representing fairly toxic relationships, and there is just absolutely so much toxicity in them. But even though I can't remember a majority of the Hush Hush series, and I even had to look up the summary of Hush Hush, I am going to have to go with that over Twilight any day, because Twilight just does not touch very well on the subject of suicide, which is mentioned. There are light suicide jokes told within the first book alone, as well as Bella constantly wanting to die and become a vampire just to be with her boyfriend that she's known maybe a few months. Personally, I cannot stand by that toxicity, and there's not much of a bigger plot than her romance with a boy she met in high school, whereas in Hush Hush there is greater stakes other than a romance. There is a whole world at stake, and there is a bigger plot going on other than her romance. Alright, so the next pair that I will be doing this or that for is the Matched series by Ali Condi, or the Infernal Devices trilogy by Cassandra Clare. Now, the Matched trilogy takes place in a futuristic world where you are assigned the person you are going to marry when you reach a certain age, and it follows the main character as she accepts that she is matched with her best friend that she's known her whole life, but then the device they give you to check all your information like that glitches and shows another face. So it follows her as she struggles with that fact and her feelings. And the Infernal Devices follows yet again as the main character is thrown into the world of shadow hunters and downworlders. This one takes place in the late 1800s in London, and it follows Tessa Gray as she tries to discover what she is exactly and to find her brother and figure out what is going on around her and find bad guy known as the Magister. Between the Matched trilogy and the Infernal Devices trilogy, I will have to go with the Infernal Devices trilogy because the Matched series really just didn't do it for me when I read it, and there were so many plot holes and it just went all over the place, and everything about that story seemed kind of forced, whereas the Infernal Devices had a lot of things I really enjoyed, and it took such a different take on the trope of love triangles and really incorporates how Shadowhunter culture has evolved from the 1800s in this series compared to what was shown in the original in Mortal Instruments series, which takes place in the early 2000s. Alright, the final pair for This or That I will be doing is My Oxford Year by Julia Whelan and They Both Die at the End by Adam Silvera. Now, My Oxford Year by Julia Whelan follows the main character Ella Duran as she has her 1 year at Oxford on a Rhodes Scholarship at the same time as her trying to work a campaign for the next presidential election while in Europe. And while she is here, she runs into this guy who ends up being the main love interest, and by the end of the book is forced to make a decision that could change her life in the course of her career, and she is forced to discover herself and who she really is and her motives behind what she wants to do with her life. They Both Die at the End by Adam Silvera follows two main characters, Mateo and Rufus. In the beginning, both have received a call from the company Deathcast, telling them that they will die within the next 24 hours. And this really follows them in their final day as eventually their paths cross and they're forced on a road of self-discovery and trying to live an entire lifetime in a single day so that they can feel like they have lived life to the fullest. Now, between My Oxford Year by Julia Whelan and They Both Die at the End by Adam Silvera, I think it will be obvious which one I pick based off of the annotations themselves. So I do pick They Both Die at the End, but both of these were an amazing read. My Oxford Year had so much growth and character development and showed more than just the romance, but I did not find myself emotionally attached to these characters, and I only cried at the very end. Whereas, while reading They Both Die at the End by Adam Silvera, I found myself crying at least 150 pages before the story itself ended. And I could not tear myself from this world or these characters for about a week and a half afterwards, and it was extremely hard to read anything after this because it left me with such a book hangover because it was so written so well and really changed how I looked at things, and there were just so many quotes and moments that I was absolutely in love with. That was it for today's video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and as always, let me know down in the comment section below any book recommendations you have for me, because I will most likely buy all of them off of Amazon to have in my collection and add to my TBR list to read later on down the road.